for the viewers, I want to first of all say welcome to the very first PlantFit Nation LiveCast. I am your host, Shabaka Amin, and many of you may have known me from my prior podcast, Celebrity Vegan Radio, which you can still find in iTunes. This morning, I am interviewing what I call someone who is a plant-based advocate. He is the director of the new film, Plant Pure Nation, and the son of the one and only Dr. T. Colin Campbell, author of the best-selling The China Study. Nelson Campbell, welcome to the show.
It's good to be here, Shabaka.
Glad to have you here. I know you've been very busy lately with the national tour and screenings for Plant Pure Nation. How's that going?
It's going very well. We started out in Chapel Hill, and you know, when you work on something this long, you get to a point where you kind of lose perspective, and I honestly didn't know how the film would be received and was pretty nervous that first night. But we had a very good showing in Chapel Hill. They had to open up a second theater to accommodate the crowd, and it's been that way every step of the way. We went down to Florida and came back through Georgia, and then went up to Tennessee, and all the way up to Chicago, and then back to Kentucky, and now we're in Ohio, getting ready to go to Pittsburgh in a short while. But the response has been very enthusiastic, so it's been a great experience.
Awesome, man. I'm glad to hear that. Of course, when I believe your second screening on your national tour was Charlotte, and of course that's where you and I met. I thought Plant Pure Nation was phenomenal. Great film, reminiscent in many ways of Forks Over Knives, but also different. But before we dive into discussing the film, I just want to get a little bit of background. I want the viewers to learn a little bit more about how you got started. So I want to ask you, when did your plant-based journey begin, and how did it start?
Mm-hmm. Well, it started a long time ago, actually. When my dad started figuring some of this stuff out, I was in my teenage years, and so I was still living at home. And my mom started changing, what it is that we were eating. Started cutting back on the meat and the dairy. Of course, I'm allergic to milk, so I had cut out the dairy when I was 13 years old anyways. But then by the time I went to college, you know, we were about 90% plant-based, I would say. And then I went to college and continued to embrace the diet. I did take a year off or so because I was wanting to play football, so I was trying to put on weight. So for a year or so, I'd go to the cafeteria and eat all the meat that I could possibly eat.
That's right.
But then, you know, I didn't feel real good. You know, I did put on some weight. I was about 20 pounds heavier than I am now. But after that, I went back to the plant-based, and I've been plant-based ever since. Over the course of my life, you know, I've gotten better at eating whole food plant-based, because there's a difference between just being plant-based and whole food plant-based. So we've gotten progressively better at that. And you know, over the years, I've been very close to my father, and I've seen what he's gone through, and I just know that the question that people oftentimes will ask, or the thing that they will say, is if this is really true, because it's such an incredible truth. The health benefits are so dramatic. They say, if this is really true, why haven't I heard this before? You know, so they're sort of disbelieving, and they discount it right from the get-go. So that's a very important thing, and a very important question people have, and that's what I wanted to address in the film. So that's really what motivated me to undertake the film project.
Okay, that's awesome, man. So, you know, one of the questions as I was in preparation for this conversation or interview, I understand what Plant Pure means, at least I believe I do. Explain to the viewers who are watching how did you come up with this concept, and what does plant pure mean to you? How do you define it?
Well, first I'll say that, we had to come up with a way to describe this diet. And the one thing that we didn't want to do is we didn't want to call this a diet or a program or a plan. And we didn't want to build a brand around a person. There's been a lot of that done in the past, and there was a time and a place for that. But if we're going to change society around this idea, I think we've got to start to communicate this differently. This idea is a fact of nature, like the blue in the sky and the green in the grass. It's actually a very simple concept. You don't need a health guru to do it. It's accessible to everyone. Mm-hmm. And so when we were thinking about, what do we call this? I wanted to come up with a term that was just descriptive, not tied to a person, not overly commercialized. And so Plant Pure seemed like a good way to describe it, because to me, it implies nature, something that's natural. And that's what a whole food plant-based diet is. It's a natural way of eating. Mm-hmm. And it's very simple. It's plant foods consumed in as whole a form as possible. So for example, you don't want to eat refined flours, because that's a processed part of the plant. You want to eat whole grains. You don't want to eat a lot of sugar or a lot of oil, because that's just a part of the plant that's extracted out and processed. What you want to do is, for example, to get your fats, you want to eat nuts and avocados. You want to get those whole grains and the whole fruits and the vegetables. And that's what a whole food plant-based diet is. That's what a Plant Pure diet is. It's just a plant-based diet in its whole natural form.
Absolutely. You are correct in saying that. I've actually been on this journey since 1989 personally. And you know as well as I know, way before the term vegan was even uttered. So 1989 is when it started for me, and you got on this journey way before I did. And I know you can vouch for some of the benefits personally. Here's my question to you. In your opinion, how important is it for this nation to embrace a plant-based diet?
Well, I think it's actually one of the most important issues of our time. And again, this goes back to the issue of how do we communicate this idea? And this is why we've got to talk about it as more than just a diet. This is something that affects so many different sectors of society. So first of all, there are the dramatic health connections, the health benefits. There are millions of people in this country who suffer unnecessarily because they don't understand this truth. This is about life and death and suffering and wellness. This is a big issue from a health standpoint. Secondly, it has tremendous connections to our economy. Mm-hmm. My background is to some degree is business. I've been an entrepreneur for a number of years, and I understand the economic burden that this imposes on our economy. And, for a number of years now, we've seen economic growth because of increasing profits on Wall Street, but not enough jobs on Main Street. It's kind of a twisted and distorted kind of economic growth that we've experienced in this country. And if we want to get back to economic growth that benefits people, I think we need to do things like, address the problem of healthcare costs and the burdens that imposes on small employers and businesses. So there are those economic connections. Then there are the political repercussions. Our government right now is headed toward bankruptcy, and our politicians and our leaders don't talk about this and don't really address it. But when you look at the demographics and the baby boom generation coming through, and you look at the healthcare costs that are going to be generated by that, and you look at the obligations of Medicare and Medicaid and all of that, Social Security, there's no way that we can afford to pay that bill. There's going to come a day of reckoning when we can no longer pay that bill. And so this has to do with the solvency of our government. It also is connected with the environment. People don't understand that Animal-based farming is the biggest contributor to global warming, and that's been well documented. It also has, repercussions for, topsoil preservation and water quality and depletion of our water resources. So there are just these tremendous environmental repercussions. So this is, and then of course a lot of people as well worry about the abuses that occur on factory farms. And I don't really lead with that argument because I don't want to, trigger, sometimes that'll trigger kind of a guilt response in people, and they'll shut down and they don't want to hear the health message. So I don't tend to really lead with that or emphasize that. But for me personally, that's an important issue. The abuse, the horrific abuse that occurs on factory farms, behind the public eye. So that's a moral issue. And so there are all of these connections all flowing through the food that we choose to eat.
Absolutely. Now, speaking of government, I know that you have, there's an upcoming rally. I just found out about it, upcoming rally in Washington, D.C. at the White House. Tell the viewers a little bit more about that. And
yes,
when it's gonna...
Yes, we have a permit to hold a rally near the White House. So on May 9th, which is a Saturday, we're going to have, first of all, the band that played some of the music in our movie will be there to do an hour-long concert, and that starts at 11 o'clock. And then at 12 o'clock, we're going to have some speakers who will talk for about 45 minutes or so, 45 minutes to an hour. And that should be really exciting. We've got some, a good lineup, including my father. And it's an opportunity for us to make a statement in a very visible way. And the timing for this couldn't be better, because right now in Washington, they're debating the new nutritional guidelines. And as you may know, and I'm sure you know, that recommendations have been made that the USDA issue guidelines that encourage people to move toward a plant-based diet. And that has kicked off a firestorm of controversy. And so there's a tremendous battle being waged in Washington, which in my view really is a battle between industry and money versus the health of people. And so we hope that we can be a positive voice through this rally event that we're going to hold.
Yeah, that's big, man. That's really important. In fact, me and my fiance, Sabrina, we were discussing our plans to attend. So hopefully we'll be able to drive up to Washington, D.C. and join you.
Well, I'd love to see you again. That'd be great.
Absolutely. Back to the film. I've got a question. In what way or ways is Plant Pure Nation as a film similar to Forks Over Knives?
It's similar in that, we're both films are promoting the same health concept, and we do also in our film provide some of the science argument behind this. But then, that's the similarity. And then in a lot of other respects, we're very different. We're really focused more on the question, why haven't we heard this before? And we also, it's a journey documentary. So, there's a journey, there's a story from start to finish that actually ends, as you know, in a dramatic way in the last part of the film. And then as we go through that journey, we digress into various topics where we look at the healthcare system. We look at farming and the connections of this to our system of food production and distribution. We look at the issue of food deserts and sort of food justice, if you will. And we look at the connections to the environment. So these are some things that Forks didn't really get into that we address in our film.
Right, that's very true. One of the things that impressed me about Plant Pure Nation was the fact that the focus was on reaching those underserved populations and communities who wouldn't ordinarily get exposed to the plant-based diet as a solution to their health issues. Can you expound on that a bit? That impressed me more than anything.
Well, for a number of years, Shabaka, as I mentioned, I've had some background as an entrepreneur in business, and I have worked for a number of those years kind of in the wellness space. And I've heard consultants, marketing consultants say over and over, and I've heard other people in the business say, if you want to sell health and wellness, you have to sell to the kind of the Whole Foods demographic, the college town type demographic. And I've never believed that. I've never bought into it. I've never believed it. And so that's why in the film, I go to a small, very mainstream rural town in North Carolina to basically disprove that idea, because people everywhere do have, they do care about the health of themselves and their loved ones. Mm-hmm. And what's so tragic in our country is that whether it's because of that attitude or because of the way we've organized our system of food production and distribution, whole communities in this country have been bypassed. Mm-hmm. There are vast areas in both urban and rural settings where people can't access anything but cheap processed foods, and foods, by the way, that are partially subsidized by the U.S. government, because the U.S. government subsidizes some of the key components that go into those processed foods. So there are vast areas of the country that are underserved, not just in terms of products and access to healthy products, but also to information, to education around this idea. Mm-hmm. And I just think that's tragic, where a key determinant in determining your future health is where you're born. That's not the way it should be.
I agree with that, man. I was very impressed with just, your position on that and taking a stand for that and focusing on an area. All people have a intrinsic right to realize health and experience mm-hmm. health and be free from disease. So that struck me on a heart level. And for me, that was big, because that is tied to the reason why I do what I do. I'm a plant-based fitness trainer, have been for 17 years in the fitness and personal training industry. And I'm excited about, I see our missions similar in the sense that my big cause right now, Nelson, as I shared with you when we met, is to ensure that in the fitness and personal training industry, patrons of that industry have an opportunity to find out about the plant-based fitness approach. Most persons that seek personal training services or want to do fitness classes, etc., they don't realize that eating is training the body as well. They don't understand the science of how eating is training, and they don't understand that the most powerful body results come from increasing plant-based food consumption, not overemphasizing exercise. And all fitness pros understand and know this. They, most experienced results producing fitness experts like myself, we know that the body results come from at least 75 to 80% of the body results produced are going to come from eating clean, eating healthy. And those are all code words and phrases for a plant-based diet. Mm-hmm. So, I respect your calls. It's like we have the same cause. You're focusing on the political end and using film. And I'm working in the fitness and personal training industry to evolve that industry so that, the citizens of this nation can actually have a real shot at health. So I appreciate what you do.
And I should say, Shabaka, that I equally appreciate what you're doing. And one of the things that I have experienced in going on this film tour is the experience of meeting people like you. It's been the most humbling experience of my life. And there are so many people out there who are taking a stand in their own communities to help bring this message to other people. And that's why I'm so anxious to get away from the old model where you sort of have a health guru and a brand around a personality and people are looking up to that person. You know, we've got to take a different approach. We've got to really explode this here, and we've got to engage people everywhere and communities everywhere to help spread this message, people like you. And, you know, you're taking a stand. You're taking a stand in Charlotte in your community, and you're showing a lot of courage, and you're doing some great things. And so we gotta, you know, we've got to get other people involved like that. That's how we're going to change this country. That's how we're going to change this, you know, society, is by engaging millions of people everywhere. You know, no one of us is more important than any other of us. You know, it's
That's
all
right.
of us together.
That's right. That's real, man. That's real talk. Describe the political push that's been a part of your journey in terms of, you know, it's been brought out in Plant Pure Nation, your efforts to get the plant-based solution before legislature. Talk a little bit about your political push and some of your efforts in Tennessee. What's the status of things now? Go into detail about that.
Okay. Well, it's actually Kentucky, but what we did is in the film is, and I don't want to give away too much of what happens, but we make an effort in the third part of the film to see if we can encourage or sort of in a way, I guess you could almost say, force the government to tell people the truth about this health concept. Mm-hmm. And so we go through a political experience in Kentucky where we're trying to get a resolution passed wherein the House of Representatives communicates to the public the truth of this health concept. Mm. And I feel very strongly that is a function of government, is telling people the truth. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, we live during a time when people have lost faith in government because mm-hmm. so much of what happens is not based on the truth. Mm-hmm. It's based on money. It's mm-hmm. based on the people who have the resources, who control the programs and the messaging and the information that we hear, and people are just fed up with it. Mm-hmm. And so that was the exercise that we went through in Kentucky, that we document in the film, and we go through that because we're trying to raise awareness. We're trying to explain to people why they haven't heard this message before. Because when people understand that, then they can take action. Then they can come together, you know. And that's really what we're trying to do, is to create a situation where we can bring people together in common cause. And one of the things that we're thinking about doing, by the way, as we go through this tour, we've had a number of requests from people who said, can we sponsor similar legislation in our state? And so one of the strategies that we're considering now is launching an effort to encourage people in every state in the nation to do in their state what we did in Kentucky. Wouldn't that be interesting?
Yeah,
if we had that kind of a bottom-up approach, you know, to force government to tell the American people the truth of this concept.
Like a petition-based grassroots endorsement or push?
Yes. What we did in Kentucky is we introduced legislation, finding of fact legislation, wherein the government would, you know, basically acknowledge the facts of plant-based nutrition. And so, you know, that would be easy to do in other states. You know, all you need is a friendly legislator to introduce the legislation. And so, anyways, we're probably going to get behind an effort to do that in conjunction with our film and the release of our film.
That's awesome, Nelson. That's really, really awesome. How real is the opposition for this campaign to increase public awareness about a plant-based diet? How real is the opposition?
It's very real. You know, when you combine the pharmaceutical industry with the rest of the healthcare industry, with the agribusiness industry, with the sort of the retail industry that are all benefiting from the status quo, you're talking about a big number in terms of economic value. I mean, those industries represent they represent the largest chunk of our economy. So there are a lot of folks that don't want to change. But, you know, again, my background is as an entrepreneur, and of course I love change. You know, I thrive on change. That's where great things happen. You know, I'd hate to live in a world where there was no change. But unfortunately, you get a lot of people in positions of power who don't have that entrepreneurial spirit, who just rather that, you know, they just keep doing the same thing day in and day out and not think about how to exploit change, you know. And whenever there's change, there's opportunity. But you have to be entrepreneurial to see it.
That's right.
And so a lot of folks just don't want to have to go through that. And, you know, the thing is, I'm convinced, though, that as this message gets out there and we start to see this change, I'm convinced that we do have a lot of entrepreneurs. We do have a lot of visionaries in this country who will embrace that change and who will figure out the opportunity that can come from it. So although, you know, we have resistance, I also think that, you know, as we get this ball rolling and we start to see this change, I think a lot of people are going to jump on the bandwagon and really help to push it along.
I agree with that. I agree with that. I call it my own form of PlantFit trivia. Here's my question for you, Nelson. What is the greatest health discovery of the 21st century?
It's exactly what we're talking about here. It's, I mean, this is an idea that can prevent most chronic disease. It also can be used to treat many chronic diseases, and this is what the research shows. And what a lot of clinicians are also learning now. For example, type 2 diabetes. This is a disease that, to a large degree, research and clinical experience shows can be treated with a plant-based diet, yet most people who have type 2 diabetes don't even know that, and many of their physicians don't know it. And in fact, this is very important. If someone has type 2 diabetes and they're on insulin and they go on a whole food plant-based diet, kind of cold turkey, their body can heal so quickly that if they don't stay on top of their glucose levels and they don't adjust the insulin in response to their improving glucose levels, they can go into hypoglycemic shock because the body's healing so fast. And so now there's increasing evidence that there's a very strong connection between this concept and cancer. And that actually goes all the way back to the 1970s when my father did research in the lab showing that he could turn cancer cells on and off merely by giving them animal protein and then taking it away. And so there is no medicine that's as powerful as this idea. This is the greatest health discovery ever made.
I can agree with that. I've got firsthand professional experience in the last 17 years. I have 3 to 4 clients, 3 of which had type 2 diabetes. 1 was borderline diabetic, and I put them on a plant-based diet, and they actually got medical confirmation that they no longer had diabetes. So it's definitely real.
Yes.
When is this film going to be released? What's the official date?
Well, what we're doing now is we're showing what we call an advanced cut of the film. So we're still editing the film as we go. In fact, when we were driving up from, where were we? I think we were going from Chicago to Louisville just a couple days ago. We were actually working on the film in the car and making changes and sending those changes back to our editor in LA, who's working on you know, making those final changes. But it's about 95% done, and it'll be fully locked down by the end of May. And then the film will be released the week of July 4th. And the first cities where the film will be released will be those cities that we're visiting on this tour, you know, on the East Coast and up through the Midwest and along the West Coast. And so it should be in Charlotte.
Come on back to Charlotte. You know I was going to Come on back to the QC.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And then we'll release in other theaters in a second wave the next week, and then the next week, and we'll just take it as far as we can. And it looks like we're going to be in at least 100 to 150 theaters around the country. But depending on the initial traffic, we may be able to expand that. So
I would say, having viewed and watched the film myself, this is going to be, Plant Pure Nation is going to be as influential, as big as the Forks Over Knives documentary. And in my research, I know you're collaborating with some of the producers and writers from Forks Over Knives, correct, in this film?
Yes, our producer is John Corey, and he produced Forks Over Knives. And then a co-writer in our film is Lee Fulkerson, who directed and wrote Forks Over Knives. Mm-hmm. And we also have an editor, Marco Jakubowicz, who is just, just an incredible artist. The guy's amazing. And we also had a fella who worked on our director of photography, Frank Smith, who's very talented as well. And then we had, others who stepped in and helped with camera work and assistant editing and assisted us with editing. And we have a really great composer. So we've got a really talented team behind this film. It was a real team effort.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm very impressed with it. And, when I was told, when you shared with the audience that this is, the film is not complete, I was thinking to myself, like, wow, I thought it was complete for me in the sense that it really did a great job of reinforcing that message of the scientific and clinical evidence supporting how plant-based diet can prevent, treat, and also reverse most of the diet-induced chronic diseases, but also the political piece and reaching, communities and groups and populations. Particularly being an African-American man, I noticed that in Plant Pure Nation, there was a great focus on African-American communities. Speak to that. What brought that about? What moved you to highlight? It wasn't just African Americans, but there's there's several segments in the film where African Americans were of the focus. How did that all come about?
Well, that was a conscious decision because, again, I just feel that there are certain groups in this country who've been bypassed with wellness messaging and health education and in many other ways as well. Mm-hmm. And it's time that stops. My background is when I was in school, I studied philosophy and economics and political science. And mm-hmm. over the course of my life, I've come to understand that none of us can be truly free unless we're all free. Mm-hmm. We've had two strands of political thought in this country. One strand kind of focuses on the individual and the freedom and liberties of the individual. The other strand of thought is sort of more looking at the community and issues of social justice. And really what I believe is intertwining those two ideas into one strand. Mm-hmm. And that is this idea that social justice is extremely important, and it's the best way to maximize our own individual freedom. Mm-hmm. Because when certain groups are left behind and bypassed and ignored, it creates all kinds of a cascade of reactions in society that affect all of us. Mm-hmm. It's kind of like my father's view of biology. You have to look at the whole. Mm-hmm. You can't look at individual pieces. You can't focus on just individual pieces. You have to figure out how to make the whole as mm-hmm. healthy as possible, because when you do, all of those individual pieces within that whole are going to thrive. Harmony. And so we've got to get to a different place in this country where we bring these strands of thought together around the idea of individual freedom and social justice together. And so, I've come to that view in my life, and I just am very passionate about the idea of making this message accessible to everyone.
Mm-hmm.
So it was no accident that I went out to the Jeffries Cross Baptist Church, for example, in Mebane, and did what we did there. And you know, we want this film to speak to everyone.
Mm-hmm.
And of all the things that I've heard on our journey, that's one of the compliments that we've gotten that's been the most meaningful to me, is that this film is diverse and broad-based and it speaks to everyone.
Yeah, as you can imagine, I was really impressed with that, and just, you know, being a fitness and wellness practitioner and professional for 17 years, African American man. When I saw that, that really let me know Nelson and his dad, just from a heart standpoint, when you care for people, you care for all people.
You
And
have to.
care has no boundaries, you know, when
Yeah.
there's love and there's care. And you know, that was really refreshing to witness. And I know that this film is going to be highly successful. In my own mind, I compare it to Forks Over Knives. However, this is, you know, we're in a different. Forks Over Knives set things in motion and had a great impact, and still has a great impact on society. Plant Pure Nation is definitely going to reinforce and help to grow and expand and increase awareness around how plant-based nutrition is really the way to go for the people, for the planet, for animals. It's no downside, you know, there's really no downside. And I'm just grateful to see someone like yourself and your dad um, doing work at this level and taking it to Washington, going to their doorstep and creating this rally. Did you want to encourage folks to come out to this rally? Who are some of the speakers, in addition to you and your dad, who are going to be talking?
Well, the two other kind of main speakers will be Neil Barnard and Michael Greger. And so they'll be talking. Neil will be talking about this political battle that's being waged in Washington. He'll talk briefly about that, and Michael will talk a little bit about the power of information, and then my dad will talk, and then I'll kind of wrap it up, focusing on really the movement aspect of this. And this is something that we talk about at every screening. That's very exciting to me, is what we're going to do after the film's released. We're creating a structure that has a strong nonprofit component where we're going to be setting up local organizations in towns and cities across America. And we're referring to these as Plant Pure Pods because we're going to be planting seeds in those local communities around this idea of plant-based nutrition. And if you want to learn more, if people want to learn more about that, they can go to our website at plantpurenation.com. But this is something that is very exciting to me, is the possibility of organizing and connecting, you know, all the people in this country like you, and bringing people together to help spread this message within their local communities. And I'm hoping that this rally in Washington can also sort of be the beginning of that process. The other thing I should mention too is that we're filming the tour as we go, and you know, we're going to capture that rally in Washington, and we're going to take that and cut that into an epilogue section at the end of the film that will kind of serve as a call to action to bridge from the film to this idea of a movement.
That's awesome, man. Mass change. It is a movement. You know, this whole plant-based diet is a movement, and it's an evolutionary trend. That it's a trend in the sense that it's hot, but it's a trend that's going to last. It's a movement and it's a trend, and it serves our biology well. It serves our ecology well. It's great for animals in terms of being able to live and roam freely, free from harm and being violated. I want to congratulate you and the Plant Pure Nation film team for bringing this to the world, you know, not just this nation, but just to the planet, because you're keeping, you know, Forks Over Knives and other documentaries have done a great job in bringing this information. And so I'm really appreciative, being a plant-based fitness trainer, to know that I have one additional documentary film that I can refer my clients to, encourage them to see, just so they can have more support. It takes, I always say, the science and the information is the first step that changes the mind and perception. But I also like the fact that, you know, you've got this pod that's up and coming, where on the grassroots level in different cities and states around the country, it's not just about the science and the information, it's getting people activated. It's getting people to experience the benefits of a plant-based diet. And so that's wonderful. That's tremendous. I want to encourage you to keep going. I'm going to include you in my prayer work, Nelson. And as I said to you when we met, I'm knowing that we'll be doing some work together in the future.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely, Shabaka. And I'll just make a couple points too in wrapping up. First is you were talking about all the benefits of this diet, and one thing that I'd like to emphasize, that this is also really good for the people who are fighting this idea. See, this message of health, it's something that affects all of us. Mm-hmm. So that person who's trying to preserve some economic interest, who's fighting this idea, we have something on our side, which is, this is an idea that's also good for those folks. It's good for them. It's good for their husbands and their wives and their kids and their moms and dads. And this is why, as we go forward in this movement, that we don't want to vilify people. You know, we don't want to antagonize people. We want to continually reach across to those who are opposing this and invite them in to our family. You know, this has got to be a revolution that's founded on love and awareness, you know, not aggression and division. And so that's a very important point. The second point is that it's people like you, quite frankly, that inspire me. You know, I appreciate all of the things that you said, but as I go around from city to city and I'm meeting people like you, like I said, it's very humbling, because you're out there and you're just doing the hard work every day to help promote this idea in your community. And that's what inspires me. That's what puts wind in my sails. And that's what gets me excited about a strategy where we make this accessible to everyone and we engage people everywhere to help promote this idea in their communities. There is no guru in this movement. There's no one who's more important than anyone else. Mm-hmm. This is just all of us connecting and working together to make this happen. And it's people like you that inspire me to think that way. So, I mean, I appreciate everything that you've done and are doing.
Thank you. I shall continue. I'm passionate about it. I too have a strong urge. I don't like seeing people suffering, and that's that's always been one of my big drivers. I enjoy hearing when clients come to me, as in recently I had a client who's overweight and reversing obesity. He came to me with gout, Nelson, and he no longer, his foot has healed. He's running, he's jogging, he's jumping rope, and his gout is gone, all because of the fact that he was open to training his body by increasing plant-based food consumption, and he's off of animal sources of food. So Nelson, thank you so much for your time, and I hope to see you in Washington, D.C. And I want to just say, you know, God is good, God is great, and may this movement is going to continue to grow. And thanks for the Plant Pure Nation film. I'm going to encourage everyone to watch it. And in my next show, I'm going to talk about it and I'm going to promote it. And this is a wonderful thing. So thank you again for your time. Thanks for this interview. And God bless you, Nelson.
Okay. Thank you, Shabaka. And I look forward to seeing you in Washington. It'll be a lot of fun.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right. See ya.
You got it, man.
Yep.
Okay, folks, well, for those of you who had the opportunity to watch this live, for those of you who will watch the replay, you heard from a man on a mission, a Plant Pure Nation mission. And this is, you know, this is serious, but it's also fun. It's also fun. It's serious. It's a great opportunity for many of you who have been medically diagnosed with chronic disease conditions. And as I tell my clients, many people come to me and sign up for my plant-based fitness training services. They come to me not just with excess body fat. They come to me with high blood pressure. They come to me with diabetes. They come to me with gout. They come to me with high triglycerides, you know. So the reality of it is, what I've learned in 17 years using this plant-based fitness approach is that when you train your body by increasing plant-based foods, whatever issues, conditions, diseases you've got going on, I guarantee you that on a whole plant-based diet, fruits, vegetables, nuts, seeds, beans, and whole grains, the nutrients in these foods actually work on and train our bodies far more effectively than exercise could ever do. So in the next PlantFit broadcast, you're going to learn a lot about what I call the evolution of fitness, the evolution in the personal training industry. I'm going to talk to you about the PlantFit initiative. It's the world's first plant-based fitness initiative. I'll share more details in the next show. Again, I am Shabaka Amin, your host. I hope that you enjoyed this conversation between me and Nelson Campbell, the director of Plant Pure Nation. Until the next time, I'm signing out, and remember this: eating is training. Get ready for the next PlantFit Nation LiveCast. I won't tell you who my guest is going to be. It's going to be a surprise. Just make sure you tune in. Thanks for those of you who watched live, and for those of you who watched the replay, which will broadcast very, very soon. You'll find out through social media. Thank you again, and have a wonderful, wonderful day.